Alright, so I wanted to try to make some of the movement mechanics for Gears of War 3, which when looking into it had a cover system, a vaulting system, and a sprinting system. So if you watch any of my other videos, you'd know that I've already done a couple of these things, so when it comes to that, all I had to do was just adjust a couple numbers, and they had it looking more like the Gears of War stuff than the Max Payne 3 stuff. However, for the cover system, I wanted to change it up and make it so that you could crouch behind this, since in Gears of War there's a lot of different spots where the player crouches behind cover. I also saw that someone was nice enough in the Unreal Engine forums to let the people know that if you want to tell when the player is moving left or right, you can literally just get the movement input, split this pin, and now you can get the left or right movement instead of having to do all this code that I did last time. So after letting the feelings of being stupid marinate in me, I decided to start using this, and my cover system went from doing all of this to just this. So this is what my cover system looks like now. I also added so that the player can't move past the dimensions of the wall, so that once the line trace sees that there's no more wall, it stops the player from moving any further. So if I push D in this direction, I can't move past this, and if I push A in this direction, I can't move past this side of the wall. One thing I did run into is not being able to crouch, even though Unreal Engine literally has a crouch function, but I think that just comes down to me not having an animation set up for when I'm crouched. And yup, had to make these states real quick. This is how I made them, and the animations are in Mixamo. Also had to take can crouch in the character movement component, so yeah, there's that too. And after that, I had to make the vaulting function. And I can't lie, this was a lot harder than I thought it was gonna be. A lot of trial and error, but in the end, I think it came out pretty good. To start off, I made a simple line trace to check for a wall in front of us. This was the easiest part since I had done that a bunch of times already, but when it comes to the bitchiest part, that's all this. And what all this does is get the dimensions of the wall, like the height and the depth. What this first section of the code does is get the height of the wall by shooting a line trace, and pretty much just shooting line traces all the way up until it gets to the top of the wall, and once it sees that there is no more wall, it lets the player know that there's no more wall to shoot up on, and that is the height of the wall. I made it so that it shoots a line trace of 5 units, or maybe 5 centimeters of a gap in between each line trace. If you want to check it more often, you could, but 5 is just a number that I like to use. What this section of the code does is check the depth of the wall, again by shooting a line trace every 5 units. And once again, once it sees that there's no more wall in terms of the depth, it lets the player know that is as deep as the wall gets, and it shoots just one little trace after, just to make sure that there's nothing sticking behind it. And what this last bit does is give us enough of a gap to be able to land behind the wall, since we don't want to just land exactly 1 unit behind the wall, because then we just be kind of glitching into the wall every time we're about to get out of our vaulting animation. And don't worry about these draw debugs, it's just because I wanted to show you guys exactly what it is that I'm doing whenever I'm talking about the line traces and stuff like that. And then the next part was motion warping, since we are using fly mode when vaulting, since we are going to be jumping a decent distance, and it just works better so that way we don't have to make a whole new animation state. All we need to do is just call the notify states, which you can do if you do this right here. And then in the animation blueprint, all we have to do is literally just this. And I'll show you what the reset vault does in a bit, so just keep in mind that this is where you're going to call it. But yeah, after we finished the set motion warping, it was time to go to the event graph. And so in the event graph, all I did was make this custom event, set a little boolean to be able to know if we're vaulting or not, set the character movement to flying mode, disabled our capsule collision, just to make sure that we're not bouncing off the wall, and then just playing our animation montage. And then all reset vault does is turn is vaulting to false, set our movement mode to falling, and re-enabling our capsule collision. And then to be able to call it when we're pushing a button, I just set it to Q, but you could set it to something else like C or control, whatever it is that you want to put. One thing that I did check for is to see if we're already behind cover, just because I still wanted the player to be able to vault if they're behind cover, just like how they do in Gears of War 3. But yeah, if we are already in cover, or we're doing a stopping cover, as you can see in the function earlier. I didn't really go in depth in it, but just know it is earlier in the video. We then check to see if we're not already vaulting, or well, if we are already vaulting. If we aren't, then we get the location of the wall, and then from there we get the dimensions and so on and so forth. If we're not in cover, we still want to be able to check if we're vaulting or not. If we're not, then we just get the OBJ location and, you know, dimensions and so on and so forth. But yeah, this is what this looks like. But yeah, this is how I made some of the gameplay mechanics for Gears of War. I know I didn't go over making the cover-to-cover system, but once again I ran out of time and it was all I could really go through. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it though. If there are any other mechanics that you'd like to see me try and recreate, let me know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching.